Hey, welcome everyone. We are taking a look at some things we can do with the Mac version of PowerPoint today. Welcome, Lance. I saw you commented earlier. Let's take a look at what we've got going on here. I've got my Mentor Mesh link here that I can provide in the comments. I can toss that out here real quick. Mute my tab. And put it out here in the comments. If you're not a member of Mentor Mesh, you should totally check it out. This is a really cool community for tech folks that are interested in networking with each other. And we'll get all these windows and stuff going here. That I can comment at least on LinkedIn easily. There we go. View tab. Okay. Now this is my 2000, it's probably a 2020 Mac. So it should be a little less sluggish than my 4 or 5 year old Mac computer was. And let's take a look at some of the things we can do with PowerPoint on a Mac computer here. One of the things we can do is these cool animated backgrounds. We go back to our window and control our video sources here. Put these side by side so you can see me and you can see my slides. And this is actually my iPad that I'm sharing here. So I've got the ability to share a iPad screen within the Mac OS. You can do this with a piece of software called Duet Display. So my Mac becomes not only mouse enabled and keyboard enabled, but now touch enabled as well. So there's some pretty cool things we could do with the Mac version of PowerPoint if we had a touch screen at our disposal, which we do if you use this. So I've got 8 slides that I created using this video background for a countdown. If I go to the draw menu, you can see that I have ink, and I can actually use my finger to ink these things. If I bring up my window here that I can see my video, here's my iPad. Got the ability to show that item that's running right now. But if I bring PowerPoint and that window to the forefront here, should be able to see that in my video. So I could go to my draw menu and I could say, thanks on my screen. And I can just draw with a finger as opposed to having to try to draw with my trackpad or something else on my slides. And then if I go back in my other window here to slide number 1, let's see if one enter works. It does. Awesome. Then we've got that thanks on our slide and our video playback for a minute. I didn't even spell the K or draw the K correctly, but you can get the idea. You could do these things ahead of time in PowerPoint and get them all ready for going live. And the animations and the timing, we did the transitions for 1 minute per slide. We applied that to all 8 slides. And then another thing I can do with PowerPoint here, if I end our show, is File, Export, and I can save this as a PDF, but I can also save it as an MP4. So if I wanted to set these up for our Journey to the Cloud or our MCT MVPs and Wannabe sessions, I could put some other animations on here to give people the second countdowns, or put a progress bar on the slide, have that run for 1 minute so people could see, you know, what that 8-minute, 10-minute, whatever countdown I want looks like. So today, what I wanted to take a look at is things we can do with PowerPoint on the Mac as well as on the PC. And I put together several different items here that we can go through, and we can use the PowerPoint feature. Again, because I have a touch screen at my disposal, I can use the slideshow menu from the start. And now on my iPad, I have this agenda where we have PowerPoint tips, we have a survey for an icebreaker, we have some animations, we have a icebreaker speech, if you will, and I also have information about layers and the Reorder Objects capability on Mac. This is probably my favorite item that I would love to see cross-platform. In this scenario, I have a slide that had several different layers of graphics, and this was a build slide. So if it was building incorrectly and I can't figure out why is one layer not showing up or covering up another layer, this is a very visual way to address my issues with my slides. It's very easy for me to go through my slides and take a look at what's going on and why those builds aren't working correctly. So if I go to my next slide here, I can see the build that I've corrected. If you go to your home area in the backstage view in PowerPoint on a Mac, and you go into your account settings and Office Insider, you can join the Microsoft Office Insider program. You can switch from the current channel preview to the beta channel. You can be right out there with me on the bleeding edge of features. And I have opted in, taken updates both from the PC side as well as the Mac side for PowerPoint. And what this means, ladies and gentlemen, is that I can do things like this. Insert ribbon here and Cameo over to the far right. I can now take video objects and put them into my slides as well. So let's see if I can drag with my finger or if I have to use yeah, I can. Look at that. Go to the camera menu, make this into a circle for my video. I can resize it if I can grab the element correctly with my finger. If it's too small for this intricate work, I can also use my mouse, which is nice. And then if my camera is not in use, I should be able to do a camera preview here. And hey, look at that. We are using our camera in Restream as well as within PowerPoint. And so if I go back over to the PowerPoint that I had open here, should be able to see the PowerPoint file live. Check that out. Hey, everybody. I'm live on Restream with my video as well as PowerPoint for the Mac with my video. And so if I wanted to use this object on multiple slides, I can hit the Command C, go back over to my video window here with my PC version of the updates, turn on my video, click to resize, and I can go ahead and click on that object with a right click, if I can get my right mouse button working here, or my right mouse action, there we go, and I can send to back, so I can put it behind video elements, bring it to the very front, or bring it forward through the different layers. And this is the challenge we just looked at from a standpoint of why were things not working? So if I'm trying to get frustrated or starting to get frustrated with that, and just, like I can't figure out why this element doesn't work, I can do reorder objects and check this out. How cool is this visual? It's not just a visual. Somebody was telling me, hey, it's, just kind of eye candy as opposed to usable. It's super usable for me. And for somebody that's trying to learn, why is this behind? And when I send it all the way to the back, it's covered up because of these other elements on the slide. Going to the very top of PowerPoint on a Mac, going to Arrange and Reorder Object with my finger because I'm using it on my iPad. Oh my gosh, how cool is this to be able to understand the layers in PowerPoint without having to do additional work. Super, super useful for me. The nice thing about Cameo and why I'm so excited about it is when I'm giving this as a slideshow and I decide to play from my starting slide, when somebody says, hey, Dan, can we go over and take a look at how objects are rendered? And I go to that section of my PowerPoint and I start going through my slides and talking about my build, show my build slide. My video now works right within PowerPoint on the Mac. And it lets me design the slide and put myself wherever I want within the context of each slide. So if each slide makes sense to use the right, however, on a third slide, it makes sense to have me on the other side and in black and white in this case to maybe change the aesthetic or change my video position, whatever else I want to do. Super, super easy to do with Cameo. And I can even have multiple video objects on the same slide, which is super, super cool. Just think about how engaging your next presentation could be if you have ways to put yourself in the video multiple times as opposed to just once, which you could do with PowerPoint in other versions here. Let's take a look if I can go back to my first slide. Let's slide over to our welcome slide with using our objects. I've created a cannon, but it doesn't look nearly as cool as the cannon we have here to the right. And then I've had the cannon shoot out Dan Ray and Mark Steele. Somebody at a client was asking, how do you do that? I saw somebody with a cannon that was shooting things across the screen and the animations were all set up and boy, was that cool. Well, Mark Steele and I on June 2nd, I believe, a Thursday, are doing a session together. I believe I have the date right. Mark will correct me if I'm wrong. But I can do all these cool animations, even returning animations. So I can go to my icebreaker and then hit the back button to come back to a summary zoom or a section zoom slide. Because I'm using an iPad here, my PowerPoint tips, I came across these in Office 2013, has a bunch of different new features in 2013, like the design capabilities and the options to set up different ways to work together on a PowerPoint presentation. I put the PowerPoint logo in the lower right, and so what I can do is I can actually navigate this in whatever order my audience wants to know. If they already know about co-authoring, I can say, okay, what don't you know? Hey, what's Slide Navigator do? Slide Navigator allows me to see all of my slides and hide the transitions between different slides from my audience. And now I'm very visual in being able to present this. And this is what the summary zoom as well as the section zoom feature in newer versions of PowerPoint built for me. I had to build all these slide elements to navigate around on the iPad or in PowerPoint using a mouse. But now with summary zoom, I could just say, hey, design this for me. Give me these different elements that I can navigate this presentation visually, as opposed to just next and next. And I can hit one enter on my keyboard, and that takes me back to my very first slide. My icebreaker had a couple items. My very first Toastmasters speech ever was called PowerPoint Not Required. Because if there's one thing you learn at Microsoft, it is to differentiate yourself. And everybody at Microsoft uses PowerPoint. You could sit through an entire day meeting where every single person that presents to you has a PowerPoint deck or a PowerPoint presentation. And I'd say 90% of those PowerPoints feel exactly the same. It's somebody with a lot of words, maybe pictures occasionally. And in 2005, when I started at Microsoft, the most compelling PowerPoint I saw was from Microsoft Research in what they call MS 101. That's like a introduction to Microsoft. The presenter brought up a slide similar to what I just showed you, or the PowerPoint tips and tricks. And his question to all of us was, what would you like to learn about? So he went to his slide show here, went to a slide similar to this, and gave us the option of what do we want to learn about as opposed to what he had to share with us. Super compelling to see something where the audience could say, hey, what's reply comment mean? And take you right to a slide that defines it.
Debate and easily drag comments right next to the relevant text or graphics, simply by typing in a reply to a comment. You can.
This presentation actually had videos of the features embedded in it. So if you weren't familiar with a particular feature in PowerPoint, Word, Excel, they had them for all the Office applications in 2013, and they had videos embedded in the PowerPoint. So the PowerPoint was somewhat large, but it was so compelling just to be able to learn about all these new features. And because the features didn't build upon each other, you didn't necessarily have to talk about the sharing before you showed the screen size or the slide layouts that you could do within the presenter view in PowerPoint. So the PowerPoint presenter view on the Mac, if I swap my displays, looks like this. I can change and see my notes. I can see my current slide larger or my next slide larger. And at the bottom, I can actually zoom right to a slide that I find most compelling for my audience. And then if presenter view didn't guess correctly that my iPad is actually the screen I want to share from, I have a swap displays, which makes it really easy to fix the fact that maybe I want to use PowerPoint Live, The customer I was going to work with told me, don't talk about anything Teams, which is really, really difficult. If you know me, you know that I talk about Teams a lot. I teach Teams. I'm doing several technical trainings on Teams administration. I've gotten the 3 certifications plus the Microsoft Service Adoption Specialist. So it's really hard for me not to incorporate Teams somewhere. Probably my second love would be PowerPoint. Dwayne Hyatt and Joe Gasper, I'm sure, can support me there. And they just had on their Shift show another podcast you should totally check out. The Shift show had Sean Villaron from the Microsoft PowerPoint team on their latest episode. And one thing that they showcased was PowerPoint Live. The customer that I was supposed to be with all day today and had some conflicts. The way they left their last session was they said, Microsoft showed us this really cool thing called PowerPoint Live. What is PowerPoint Live? And I thought, PowerPoint Live is the piece in the product that I thought you told me you didn't want to hear about. And that's because Sean corrected some of the wording that is associated with PowerPoint features, whether they are brought up in PowerPoint directly or within PowerPoint when you are using Teams. So I believe PowerPoint Live in Teams is the verbiage for using PowerPoint features when you're in a Teams meeting. So it allows you to choose a PowerPoint when you're in Teams. The other feature is called PowerPoint Show. And you can also do, here's another tip or trick, PowerPoint.new in any browser. I didn't even know about this. And normally, any browser, you should be able to create a presentation. What I learned in reading more about this is the exception to that, any browser, might be Safari on the Mac. So it looked like this PowerPoint.new may not work on the Mac, and even more importantly, PowerPoint.new, setting up a PowerPoint. So I could do our countdown for our 30 days of Mentor Mesh. Talk about the Shift show. It's also Follow Friday. So I'm going to be shouting out some people that you should totally follow. I don't know why this suggested a baseball for my slides, but we'll go with the Follow Friday. We'll leave that as a hashtag together here on my slides. We'll let it suggest white, whatever. And then within PowerPoint, when you are in the web version, in any browser except Safari, I learned you can now present live. And I can change the audio settings, and I can set it up so anyone can view my PowerPoint while I'm in a live setup. So I could have intros and introduce people like Dwayne Hyatt, somebody you should follow, Joe Gasper, somebody else you should totally follow, Sean Villaron from the PowerPoint team. You love PowerPoint as much as I do. He's totally somebody you should check out. And then who else? Mike Hansen is somebody else that just moved to a new job. So we could put, let's say Blackstone, Black Rock, Black something. She told me where she's working, and I hope I have it correct. We also have Hermine Turner that you should totally follow. And who else? We've had a couple other people that have sent stuff. Lance was on our call earlier. Let's see if we have anybody else out in the chat here. And Lance, I'm going to use this to help me spell your last name correctly, hopefully. That's the only folks I see. I'm going to turn off our music in Restream here and grab a link for others that might want to join us. And we'll toss that into 2 streams in Join Us Live in Restream on my company page and on my personal page. Join Us Live. So we've posted those 2 links there. What else can we do here? Oh, this is probably the coolest thing. So when you go live with PowerPoint Live, or sorry, present live with PowerPoint, the first thing it does is it brings up a QR code. And so this was the piece the customer was so excited about. They were like, God, we saw this really cool feature where we can go to a QR code. And once we use the QR code, we can actually see the PowerPoint and see it translated into any language on our phone. How do you do that? I was like, you know, if it's in Teams, I probably know how to do it. If it's this standalone function, I'm going to have to do a little bit of digging. And I had to remember, do you do this in PowerPoint under the slideshow? Do you do this in the browser? Just researching and doing some searches, I found the PowerPoint.new. You can create Word documents with Word.new in a browser. Excel.new. Probably knew that at one point, but had forgotten it. So this is not only showing me my slide with Dwayne and Joe and Sean, Micah, Hermine, and Lance. This is also showing me what I'm saying. And Jennifer is the other person that has been kind enough to fill out a PowerPoint that I suggested people fill out to introduce themselves if they can't make our live shows. So Jennifer Buckholtz. And Jennifer, without bringing up that slide, I don't know if I'm butchering your last name or not. Hopefully not. But now we've got this PowerPoint live. We've just made an update to it, and I can see that update on my phone real time. You can also send that code to people. So I can copy the link, show the welcome screen again to everybody. So you can join from the QR code. So you just point your camera to the phone, or sorry, to your screen, use the QR code. It will send you to the web page that shows you the PowerPoint and can translate into whatever language you choose. How cool is that? Some of the inclusivity that the PowerPoint team is doing is just nuts. It's just so much fun to play around with. The PowerPoint Cameo feature, I don't believe works here. It is embedded into the PowerPoint application. But there's a whole roadmap for some of these features, many of which those features and roadmap I can't talk about publicly, but that's one of the most fun things about being a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional is getting to give the PowerPoint, the Teams team, the other groups at Microsoft feedback on, here's something I love about the platform. Here's something that can be improved about the platform and that I'm hearing from customers. For instance, the customer I was working with and mentioned isn't using Teams. So anything that's tying a PowerPoint feature in tightly to Teams is great for me, is great for my customers that are using Teams. And I have several customers that are. I have a customer in the TAP program, the Technology Adoption Program, that I'm working with currently. It's great for them. It's not good for this large tech company that doesn't use Teams. I'm assuming they use Slack. And I've talked to another high-tech company that I use quite a bit, their software, and they are not using Office. So PowerPoint and Teams are kind of off the regular tools that they use. LinkedIn, the application, the social media network that I'm live on my company page and my personal page, does use Teams, does use PowerPoint, but they use pretty much everything that you can think of. So it's a really interesting acquisition from Microsoft because it's not all just PowerPoint or just, these slideshows and features that we might think of as something that a Microsoft company would talk about, focus on, etc. So if I go over to my PowerPoint here and we take a look at my, this was another thing I discovered was the video doesn't play in PowerPoint when you're using it as a show. So the video doesn't play, but I think the video plays from your phone, which was interesting. So if I go to my slide and I go back to slide 1, yeah, it does. I can actually play the video from my phone, but then I'm not in the PowerPoint anymore. So this was a little kludgy for me, was I can play the video, but then I have to X out of the video to go back to the slides. And I can actually go through the slide show, and I have some gestures I can use and some other features from the PowerPoint features here that might not be available on the Mac or from the browser perspective. One of the other features you can use is Rehearsing with Coach. You can get rid of all those ums, ahs, guys, non-inclusive language that you use. You can even now have it give you feedback on body language in the browser. So that is something that I think Michael Blumenthal, shout out to Michael. He is another MVP in Office Apps and Services and put together like a really long presentation for the virtual Microsoft 365 virtual marathon last week, if memory serves, and shared that presentation with a number of us. So I have several different places that we are live here. And then I can also look at my browser and see if anybody has joined us. In Restream, when people join a meeting from a link, you get a notification, a little message, and you see their previews in the far left. So if I drag that window over here, I can show you what I'm talking about. The far left, I can see that I'm sharing my video, I'm sharing my screen from my iPad, and I've got my audio here. So I can turn back on my audio. There's several audios that I can use. I can turn it up, I can turn it down, and I have some pretty cool features in Restream that I can use, including inviting guests with a link. And I can even allow those guests to broadcast or stream from their services as part of my Restream software. So a pretty neat producer experience. If you haven't used Restream, I highly recommend it. Love the software. Really happy that it works on this Mac. This is a current enough one. It's not an M1 Pro processor like in my 16-inch Mac, but alas, I've lost my coveted, at this point, touch bar. And the reason I'm really getting stoked about the touch bar is because of its integration with PowerPoint. There are so many cool little things that I can do with the touch bar when I'm using PowerPoint on this Mac that I just discovered. I had used this older Mac that didn't have a touch bar. I was like, do I really want to spend a couple $1,000s on hardware to just get a touch bar? And what I realized was, yeah, I think I do. And if I look at PowerPoint 2019, we'll call this file with my 8-minute countdown and my thanks spelled weird and my 30 days of mentor mesh, where I bought my 13-inch Mac was from, I know it's Sell Your Mac or Selling and Brian Burke. And then I think there's a link from here to where you go to Get Macs by Renewed is where you can purchase. Renewedmacs.com is his sale site. So I was able to go out to a MacBook Pro, say I'm looking for a particular size and device. I'm looking for a MacBook Pro. I want to make sure it has a 13-inch screen. If based on my eyesight, I'm doing the smart thing, I might say that I want to look for a 16-inch screen because Mac made those in the Intel flavor for a while, till at least late 2019. And there are devices out here that meet my specs and are around $1,300. Could get one for $1,300 with a touch bar late 2019. Get one for right around that same price. And then as you look at the descriptions, you can figure out, do they have the touch bar or not? And then go into the details of the devices. There's 2 of these left. I can see what the color is, the specs on the device, as well as the condition and things. So I love Brian's site for used Mac hardware. At some point I may sell some hardware on his site, but this has been super useful to look at, how do I get the most out of the devices and don't pay the Apple tax, as some people call it, for the brand new, devices, that type of thing. So very cool. Brian calling you out today as well as somebody people should follow and be aware of, especially if they like the hardware on Macs, but they don't like the price tag associated with that hardware, which can be pretty high. So we've looked at a couple websites. We've looked at a couple capabilities in PowerPoint on the Mac. Here's one last feature that I discovered in doing some research for a customer that was saying, hey, we use Macs a lot and we occasionally use PCs. So maybe don't spend the entire time telling us all the cool things we can do with the PC version of PowerPoint because we use it, but we don't use it exclusively. So here I've got a picture on a background in a slide. And one of the things I discovered and then had to read about because I wasn't sure if this was a PC thing or a Mac thing, it's a Mac only thing, is Animate as background. How cool would it be if I can just say, I want to go from here over to my cat Oliver. And that's my animation. Now, if I go into slideshow mode, check this out. I can control how long the animation takes to move across my slides from one place to another. This is my LinkedIn shirt. I should shout out Who got me this? Jacob Cinnamon Murphy. Jacob, thank you so much for getting me a LinkedIn Pride shirt last year. The Pride shirts were not available as a Microsoft employee from the Microsoft alumni store or eCompany store. LinkedIn apparently has their own company store, go figure. So I reached out to somebody that works in LinkedIn at the Chicago office, and I said, hey, could you do me a favor? If I pay you, could you send me 4 LinkedIn Pride shirts? And I got one for my wife, one for my daughter, one for my son, and of course, one for me. So there's that Animate as background. And I linked using the same PowerPoint feature that we use to navigate our PowerPoints kind of creatively to the location and support that talks about animating in background slides in PowerPoint for the Mac. You can only set this up on a Mac, but the cool thing is I went to my Windows 11 PowerPoint version, and once it has been set up, it still works cross-platform. So that was a welcome addition to my arsenal of understanding both and what I consider bilingual. I speak both PC as well as Mac. The other thing that I have discovered is the Mac has all these cool fonts that I just love. Phosphate is one of my favorites. And unfortunately, Phosphate only works on the Mac. So if I come down here and I use this to say follow Friday, and then I say I want to use my Phosphate font, and I want to say 30 days of mentor, mentormesh.io, I believe is the website. 30 days of mentor mesh. That's what happens when I move over to my PC. Follow Friday gets this really ugly font interpretation, and 30 days of mentor mesh, same deal. What you can do that I discovered was when you paste in PowerPoint, if you use the arrow to the right, you can paste as picture. Check this out. It looks exactly the same as the Follow Friday below. However, the Follow Friday above is a photo. So it has a picture format. And I can do things with the color and change it as a photo. And when I import this into my PC, because the photo has the font that I used on the Mac, guess what? It stays, and I can use this as a way to permanently make sure that how I set up all of my painstaking work in here. Let's go back. I didn't copy this correctly, apparently. Control or Command C. And then we come to our arrow to the right, paste as picture. There we have 30 days of mentor mesh as a photo as opposed to a font. The other cool thing is it can be resized because it's now, a photo, not a font. You can lose some quality in resizing, but you get the idea. I can now go to the picture format, and I could make changes very quickly to maybe make this orange or yellow or whatever else I want to do, make it somewhat transparent green. So it's just a really cool way to be able to use PowerPoint. And then we can also talk about the reorder objects again and see all those different layers where I have the Follow Fridays and the 30 days of mentor mesh. And I have people like J.A.E. Taylor, who founded Mentor Mesh. So pretty cool stuff that we've looked at today on the Mac. We've seen how to get a Mac for the, on the cheap, We've looked at some of the features like the touch bar. I did a post yesterday, I think, without sound because I didn't realize I wasn't producing sound within the video, but showed off my touch bar in the Mac platform and applications like PowerPoint, where it gives me some pretty cool features. We looked at inserting and installing the Office Insider build so you can get features like Cameo, and I can set up my video right within PowerPoint. I mentioned you can have multiple video. Check this out. Control or Command C, Control V. Now there's 2 Dans. Control V. Now there's 3 Dans. There's 4 because I'm in the picture too, right? And I can go to my camera menu and I can reframe these. I can make one a circle. I can make another a different shape. So I can go to camera shape and I can make myself a heart and then resize my heart. How cool is this stuff that you can do with PowerPoint Cameo? And imagine using this on a Surface or a device with 2 cameras. That was another trick that I learned, was I can use multiple cameras in Cameo. So I could have one camera that's using the front-facing camera in the Surface and the other Cameo using the rear-facing camera in the Surface. I don't remember where I went to set that up. I only have one camera on this Mac right now, but if I put a secondary camera, like a webcam that I could hold up, that's what I was doing yesterday. I was holding it up to my touch bar so that you could see my touch bar within Restream as well as my screen sharing. So there is our Cameo with our 3 preview videos. And if I go into PowerPoint presentation mode, the cameos show up as live video right within my PowerPoint slideshow. And then it totally messes up my zoom to me and my shirt and to my cat because they're behind the layers of my Cameo videos. And all of this has not brought this Mac to its knees on Restream, as far as I can tell. Let's go back to my LinkedIn app on my phone. You can see if anything has gone horribly wrong, which did last time I used my Mac. It was the older one. Brian, it might be time for a new 16-inch Intel. I saw you had a Core i9 and $1,300. I mean, you know, who can pass that up for a 16-inch device to begin with, but let alone a Mac. The other nice thing about Macs that I really enjoy is I can do all this cool stuff with the Mac version of Microsoft software, but I can also do it in the Windows version with software like Parallels. I use Parallels quite a bit. Love that application. Can even virtualize older versions of the Mac software. So I have like old versions of the Mac version of PowerPoint and the rest of Office installed in virtual instances on, I think it's the 15-inch device. That's probably 6 years old at this point, something like that. So with that device, it might be time to look at what Brian Burke provides for selling a 15-inch MacBook Pro versus buying a new 16-inch MacBook Pro. New to me, used, renewed from a standpoint of the purchase. So that's it, folks. We're gonna send you out here with a outro. Thanks for everyone joining. At some point, I will figure out our next MCT MVPs and Wannabes event, and I'll send out a link to that. And I hope everybody stays safe, has a great weekend, and see you around. Cool, Lance. Thanks for the info. Edge profiles I just discovered like last week. Really, really cool.